In today's video, we go over the 4 main options that you have with your old 401k, as well as the pros and cons of each. Outside of extremely specific legal circumstances, an employer cannot take away your contributions and investment gains to a 401k when you leave their company, regardless of how long you've been there. This is separate to the employer contributions, which you may or may not forfeit when leaving, depending on the employer's vesting schedule. Vesting refers to the waiting period between when an employer makes a contribution to your 401k plan, typically called a match, and when that money, including all of its gains, is legally considered yours. If you leave before the vesting period is finished, the employer has every right to take back their contributions, including all of the gains of those contributions from your 401k. But if you leave after the vesting period ends, all of that money is yours, and therefore you're free to do whatever you want with it. The first thing that you should do when leaving a company is ensure that you still have access to your 401k plan when logging in outside of company devices. In my previous company, I only ever accessed my 401k plan through my company computer, and it was painful to try to figure out how to access that same page on my personal laptop. I had to call up my old HR department and have them send me a code that I could use to log in, and it was a whole big process that could have been entirely avoided had I set up my access on my personal devices before leaving the company. If you've already left though and you're struggling to access your 401k plan, don't worry. Just call up your old employer's HR department and they should be able to help you. Once you have access to your 401k portal, the next thing you should do is check the total balance owned by you. This includes all of your contributions and gains and all of your employer's vested contributions and gains. This will not include your employer's unvested contributions and gains. Depending on how long you've been at the company, you might be pretty surprised at this number if you didn't know it already. Putting away 4 or 5% of your income plus employer matches, investing it and allowing it to compound over time, that can really add up. And then the final thing you need to confirm before you can make a decision about what to do with your 401k is figure out what kind of 401k you have. Is it pre-tax or post-tax, also called traditional or Roth? Most 401k plans are typically pre-tax, but there are definitely some out there that are Roth 401ks. It should say on your portal, but if you can't figure it out, just call your old HR department and they should help you find out. Now that you can access your 401k, you know how much money is yours to keep, and you know what kind of 401k account type you have, you can decide what to do with your old 401k from one of 4 options. The first option is to just keep your 401k exactly where it is. This is definitely the easiest option and requires basically no effort on your part. However, it does come with a few pretty major drawbacks. First, employers will often charge pretty high fees to maintain a 401k account for employees who are no longer employed at the company. And these fees can cut into your investment gains and be pretty expensive in the long run. The other issue with this option is purely a logistical issue. If you change jobs often, it can be pretty hard to keep track of all of your different 401k accounts. For example, if you switch jobs every 3 years, after a 30-year career, you'd have 10 401k accounts. And another thing you need to know about this option, an employer is not legally required to maintain a 401k for old ex-employees if the balance of that 401k is under $5,000. If it's between $1,000 and $5,000, they have to help you move it somewhere else. But if it's below $1,000, they have every right to close your 401k and cut you a check for the amount. You really want to avoid this option if at all possible, because it's very likely that you'll be hit with taxes and incur a penalty for taking your 401k amount as cash. Your next option is to roll over your old 401k into your new employer's 401k plan. You'll have to look at the specific plan details of your new 401k at your new employer, but for the most part, typically employers don't charge high fees to maintain 401ks for current employees. Because of this, rolling an old 401k into your new 401k plan can help reduce the amount of fees that you're hit with to maintain that 401k account. Another thing to consider here too is the plan options from your old 401k to your new 401k. The new plan might have better options. Again, you'll have to consult your specific plan details and ask your new HR department if it's unclear, but there may be funds with lower expense ratios that reduce your fees and costs even further. If you choose to roll over your old 401k into your new employer's 401k plan, it is really important to understand what type of account your old 401k is and what type of account your new 401k plan is, because if these 2 account types are different, you may have to pay unexpected taxes. 401ks can be either traditional or Roth, sometimes called pre-tax or post-tax. Traditional 401ks mean that you don't pay any taxes on the money you contribute, basically getting a tax break when you contribute money to those accounts. But the money does grow, and ultimately you do have to pay taxes when you withdraw it in retirement. Roth 401ks, on the other hand, work the totally opposite way. You don't get any special tax breaks when you contribute money to a Roth 401k, but when that money grows and you ultimately withdraw it during retirement, you don't have to pay any taxes. On paper, these are both great account types and mathematically work out to be the same end result if you look at a long period. But what account type will work better for you just totally depends on your current tax situation, your income right now, and your projected income during retirement. But why this is important when you're considering rolling over an old 401k into a new 401k is that you have to make sure that the old 401k plan matches the same account type on the new 401k plan. If you roll an old traditional 401k into a new Roth 401k, that will incur a taxable event because you're taking money that was pre-tax, you got a tax break for it, and moving it into an account where all the money in that account was supposed to already have been taxed. This can make sense in some situations. In fact, some people do this deliberately, but generally speaking, unless you are prepared to pay a big tax bill, you want to avoid this and keep the money in the same type of account during the rollover. Basically, just make sure a traditional 401k rolls over into a traditional 401k and a Roth 401k rolls over into a Roth 401k. Of course, if your new employer doesn't offer a 401k, you'll have to consider another option, like rolling over your old 401k into an IRA. An IRA is very similar to a 401k. Ultimately, they're both investment accounts meant for retirement. But the key difference is that an IRA is managed by you, whereas a 401k is managed by an employer. And because you manage it, you don't need to worry about moving it to a new employer every time you change jobs. You also have more flexibility in IRAs. In an IRA, you can invest in everything on the stock market, from ETFs to mutual funds to index funds to individual stocks. In most 401k plans, on the other hand, the plan will give you a selection of funds to invest in, and those are your only options. And if you use a no-fee brokerage, like so many are today, your annual fees will likely be lower in an IRA than if you used a 401k. However, the amount of money saved will vary greatly from employer to employer because some employers offer really great investment options in their 401k plans that have really low expense ratios that are completely comparable to the type of things that you could invest in an IRA. Generally, though, this difference is typically very small, and so it shouldn't sway your decision too much. Similar to the previous option, you'll have to pay special attention to the account types of the 401k that you're rolling over and the account types of the IRA you're moving that money into. Just like 401ks, IRAs can be traditional or Roth, and if the account type is different than your 401k, you may be liable to pay taxes on that rollover. So if you have a traditional 401k, you'll want to roll that over into a traditional IRA. If you have a Roth 401k, which are less common but definitely not unheard of, you'll want to roll that over into a Roth IRA. Switching the account types during this rollover can make sense in some situations, but just be very aware that if you choose to do this, you may be incurring a taxable event. Also, it's important to note that IRAs have an annual contribution limit of $6,000, soon to be raised to $6,500 in 2023, but 401k rollovers do not count towards this contribution limit. So you can contribute $6,000 straight to your IRA and then initiate a rollover from your old 401k for whatever amount and have no problem. If you choose this option, call your old employer's 401k plan and ask to initiate a direct rollover to an IRA at another brokerage. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see a tutorial on how to do this because there are several steps involved and it can be somewhat of a complicated process if you've never done one before. And if you don't already have an IRA open, check out my other video on how to open an IRA at Charles Schwab step by step. One final thing to note about this option though, if you're doing a traditional 401k to a traditional IRA rollover, this may present some challenges in the future if you're a high earner. This is somewhat complex, so I'll save the details for another video, but basically at a certain income, you are no longer allowed to directly contribute to a Roth IRA. Around $130,000 to $140,000 for single filers, and about $205,000 to $214,000 for married filers. To get around this income limit, you are legally allowed to do what's called a backdoor Roth IRA conversion, which basically means that you directly contribute to a traditional IRA and then immediately convert that money into a Roth IRA. This works pretty seamlessly, unless you already have money in a traditional IRA, which opens up a whole lot of complexity and possible tax responsibilities. Basically, if you are at or think you will ever be at these income limits, I would not roll over a traditional 401k into a traditional IRA. Instead, I think the better option would definitely be to roll over your old traditional 401k into your new employer's traditional 401k plan. This does not impact Roth 401k to Roth IRA rollovers though, so if your old 401k is in that type, rolling it over into a Roth IRA is still a great option. If you have a traditional 401k and you cannot roll it over into your new employer's 401k plan, nor can you keep it at your old employer, you could consider rolling it over into a Roth IRA. Be very aware though that this is considered a taxable event and you will have to pay taxes on the conversion of that money. But once your money is converted to Roth, you don't have to pay any taxes on the gains or the growth, so you're not necessarily paying any extra taxes over the lifetime of the investment. The fourth and final option I want to discuss is cashing out your old 401k. I almost didn't include this option on the list because it's just a universally terrible choice, but I wanted to include it so that you guys know all of the options you have available. Cashing out your 401k essentially means that your 401k plan will close your account and write you a check for the balance of that account, and then deposit it straight into your checking account where you're free to do whatever you want with it. However, there is a catch, and it is a pretty big one. Not only do you have to pay taxes on that money, but because you're presumably withdrawing that money before the IRS's retirement age of 59 and a half years old, you also have to pay a 10% withdrawal penalty. And depending on how much money you have in your 401k, this can be a huge hit. Additionally, cashing out your 401k means you're taking money out of investments. So this can have a huge opportunity cost because your money is no longer growing and experiencing the potential gains of the stock market and the gains of compounding interest. When you're in your 20s or 30s, cashing out $10,000 or $20,000 from an old 401k may not seem like much, but you could be missing out on massive potential growth by the time you retire. Just $10,000 invested at age 25 will grow to $150,000 by the time you retire at age 65, and that is a huge amount of potential money lost. Ultimately, if you have a 401k from an old job and you're just not sure what to do with it, rolling it over into your new employer's 401k or rolling it over into your own IRA are both great options. Just remember to pay special attention to the account types so that you don't incur a possible taxable event. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you learned something from this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. I make new videos every single week on personal finance, investing, retirement, and a ton of other topics. So consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this. Thanks, and I'll see you all next week.